Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the discussion forum today. And today we're going to be looking at collection storage and collection organization again. Next slide. So just our usual guidelines for engagement. There will be opportunities for people to contribute and ask questions, and you can also do it in the chat box. Keep contributions helpful and considerate. In the chat box now, you can say hello and let us know which institution you're from. And then through the presentation, you can also ask questions in the chat box, and there will be an opportunity to ask questions at the end of the presentations by our guest panelists today. So you're very welcome to engage actively in the discussion in the chat and later when we have an opportunity. Next slide. So just to go back to the webinar that we had last week on collection storage and organization. So we talked about the standards for storage for collections. So the storeroom where the collections are housed should be structurally sound, and the windows and doors should be kept closed and well sealed. It should be a dark room, and there should be air ventilation, that's mechanical. There should be stable temperature and humidity, that's at the correct level. And there should be data loggers to monitor temperature and humidity. There also should be appropriate fire prevention, detection and suppression systems, and the room should be well secured. So that's in terms of access control, so who can come in and when. And then the storage infrastructure, so this is your cabinets and shelving. It should be metal. And if there are cabinets, the doors should seal very well. And metal cabinets should be sturdy and not liable to tip over or fall. They should never be overloaded with specimens, so you shouldn't have buckling in the shelves, and there should be some kind of barrier to prevent bottles or specimens falling off the shelf. And if you have drawers in a cabinet, they should open smoothly and not have to be yanked or jerked or shaken to get them open. And then for storage containers, so these are, if you've got specimens in boxes, it should be archival quality card. If you've got lining in boxes, that should also be archival quality material. And if there's specimens sitting, if they're delicate specimens, they should have some kind of cushioning or packaging to prevent them knocking against the sides of a box or from developing pressure points from sitting on a shelf. Wet collection should always be in glass bottles or containers, not plastic containers, and there should be a polypropylene screw-on lid. So you have to be careful of all other kinds of plastics because they do erode and disintegrate eventually or crack from the ethanol. And for very big specimens, they should be kept in fiberglass or stainless steel tanks or containers, again with a very well sealed lid. Next slide. So those were the standards that we discussed for the storage of collections. And then the second part of the webinar last week was about the collection organization. And what we said is that there should be a policy on organization. So it can be a very short policy. It can be part of your curation and collection management policy. But there should be something to say, that the collection is organized according to whatever system. The standards, so you would have a standards document describing exactly how the collection is organized. And then also describing how the location of specimens in the collection is documented. So how do you find a particular specimen? So what's your system for numbering the rooms, numbering cabinets or shelves, and then numbering drawers or something else? So it should all be documented. And then there should also be procedures or workflows for permanently moving a specimen from one place to another place in the collection. And how do you document that? So those are procedures. And if you have a very big and very complex collection, you might also want to have a procedure document saying how you would integrate new specimens into the collection. So what would the process be for that? Okay, next slide. So those are the points, the main points from the webinar, and the main points that we need to think about in terms of collection organization and collection storage. And I just put these slides in here just to show that if we had a storage area for our collections that was underground, under ice, completely sealed, no door, no windows, very, very well sealing doors that are automated, it's kept cold, it's kept dry, everything is organized on these metal shelving, these metal shelves, you would actually need very little active care for this collection. So this particular collection that's shown here is actually a seed bank, and it's the Svalbard World Seed Bank. I think it's in Norway, and it is in the ice. So you go underground, under the ice into it. And so you can imagine that it is a very stable environment. But most of us don't have this kind of facility. So we've got buildings with air drafts, dust coming in, temperature fluctuations, water leaks, evaporation, all kinds of environmental elements that need to be managed. So we don't have this kind of situation. Next slide. So this graph here, I just thought I'd put it in because it shows the risks associated with collection storage when you don't have enough staff. So from the 2011 reports from the collection assessment that I did as part of the big NRF assessment, I looked at the storage environment and the storage containers and the way the collection was stored. And I had a score for that. So if there were lots of risks, then the score would be high on that y-axis from 0 to 6 to 18. And then I also looked at staffing, and I also had a measure for how much of a risk the staffing was. And that was if there were no staff or if there were very few staff for a very big collection. And so if a collection had very high environmental risks, so very poor storage, and no staff or very few staff, it meant that it was at massive risk, at extreme risk. And there were 3 collections that were at extreme risk. So each of these points on the graph and the numbers refers to a particular collection. So you can see even collections that have a high staffing risk, so they have very few staff, so that number 37 at the bottom, they have very few staff, but they have very good environmental conditions, storage conditions, and so it's still quite a low risk to that collection. So it just shows if you've got good conditions, even if you don't have enough staff, your collection is not at high risk. So of the 98 zoology collections that I assessed, 48 were at high risk and 3 were at extreme risk based on the storage environment and the staffing. So 8 were considered at high risk. So those are the ones in that pink circle. Those were high risk because of not enough staff and poor storage environments. Right, next slide. So what we're going to be looking at today is just to look at some examples of storage arrangements and collection organization from different institutions. So we've got Afribugs, the private collection, we've got Scocusa, which is a reference collection, and then we've got the East London Museum Bird Collection and Sandy's Compton Herbarium. And we'll have a chance for questions and answers relating to those presentations. And then we're going to talk about the assignment guidelines. And if you're not doing the course, then it's just the template for the manual implementation and what do you need to do for storage and organization of the collection. And then we'll have another chance for questions and answers. So at this stage, I'm going to hand over to Phil Whittington from the East London Museum Bird Collection, and he's going to tell us about their cabinets for bird storage. So over to you.
Right. We've had 40 custom-made steel cabinets made to house our birdskin collection. And this is a photograph of a section of those. And these were bought with funding that was secured by the NSCF. So we're extremely grateful to the NSCF and DSI for obtaining these cabinets. The reason why we needed these cabinets is because the birdskin collection was previously, and still partly is, housed in wooden cabinets that were made in the 1950s. They're actually handmade. They're attractive, very skillfully put together, but they do have disadvantages in that they are prone to specimens developing mold, and in fact the drawers actually get mold as well. And over time, some of them have become rather stiff, difficult to open and difficult to close, and sometimes it's quite difficult getting the drawers out and back in again. So we decided that the answer to this was to try and transfer to steel cabinets, which are more inert. They're not as prone to developing mold. Certainly the cabinets themselves won't. The drawers are all very nicely, they move very nicely in and out, so we don't have any problems in that respect. We actually got these cabinets through a local company. It took quite a bit of research to find one, but they're bought through a company called Tidy Files, which is based in East London. And the cabinets themselves are actually made by a company in Johannesburg. I can, if anyone's interested, I do have the name of that company. And then they were actually brought down to East London by road, and then they had to be transferred into our storeroom, which we had great fun doing that. We actually had some of our own staff coupled with the staff that came down from Johannesburg, and then people from Tidy Files as well came to help. We learned from previous experience with other cabinets that we'd got previously that we actually needed them made in two halves. So the top half was actually made separately and then bolted onto the bottom half in situ. And this allowed them to fit into our hoist because our storage area is on the second floor. So all these cabinets actually had to go up in a hoist, the drawers separately and the frame of the cabinets separately, and then all put together once they were in situ. The collection was actually moved before we got the cabinets. As I said, they were previously wooden. It used to be in a rather dark looking room next to my office. There we are. There's the old store. This is what the old store looked like, and you can see the wooden cabinets either side there. We actually had a carpentry firm to come in, and these cabinets were actually built inside the store, and they would not come out in one piece as they are. So they had to be disassembled, which was done by a carpentry company. And they were physically then moved across to the new store and treated with I'm not quite sure what they used, but it was pretty lethal sort of stuff, I think, and had to be rebuilt inside the new store. In the meantime, we took out all the drawers, put all the specimens in sequence into our walk-in freezer, kept them in there for at least 48 hours, put the drawers in the freezer as well. And then they moved across to the new store and literally put on the floor. And when the cabinets were finally put back together again, we were able to transfer the specimens back into the cabinets. So we had to make sure all those drawers and the cabinets were very carefully labeled so the right drawers went in the right place. The only problem is going back to the new cabinets, there's an example of one of the old wooden drawers with our Cape parrots in. Those parrots have now gone into the new cabinets. One mistake which I made was not changing the design of the cabinets such that they didn't all have large drawers at the bottom. The two large drawers were there to house our large specimens. Unfortunately, we now have a surfeit of large drawers and not enough small ones. So if anyone's got bright ideas on how to subdivide those stores, then I'd be grateful to hear them. Okay, thanks very much.
Okay, so thank you very much to Phil for that. I think that's a very interesting example of old storage, new storage, and the challenges of actually moving something like this. It's very interesting. And I remember when I did the collections assessment in about 2010, and I looked at that bird collection, that storeroom that they were in was really not suitable. I think it had had leaks and water damage. And so it was a really important step, moving it into a new storeroom, but then also getting the new cabinets. So we will maybe get some input if anyone has suggestions about how you can divide up a very big drawer into smaller compartments. We can talk about that at the end. Okay, so now we're going to move on to the next presentation. And unfortunately, Nikisha couldn't join us today because she's got another meeting that she had to attend, but she did send through some slides and some photos of their collection. So this is in Scocusa, and it's a reference collection. So it's got all kinds of different types of collections. So they've got wet collection with mammals, fish, reptiles, amphibians, and invertebrates. And they've got those stored in glass jars and glass console jars. And the majority of them have plastic lids. So I think those are standard plastic lids. And then she said some of the larger mammal specimens have to be moved into new containers or tanks as the older ones have deteriorated. So the glue seal has deteriorated. And then they also have like a display area in that little museum. So a portion of the jars are displayed. They're housed in wooden cabinets that have glass shelving. So this is something that we haven't discussed before, the issue about glass cabinets and glass shelving. And Rendani raised this point last week. So in their display, they've got these glass shelves, and then the remainder of the specimens are distributed in 2 storerooms. The jars are being placed on steel shelving. However, the shelving lacks restraining bars, which do need to be incorporated. They still need those bars. The storerooms are kept dark at all times unless in use. Windows and doors are kept closed at all times in both the storeroom and the museum. So I think their museum, she's talking about the area where things are displayed. Right, next slide. So here you can see their wet collection, and you can see an assortment of different types of glass bottles. And then you can see in the middle there a glass display cabinet. So I don't think those are common in bigger collections. And there you can see it's a display specimens, also in glass bottles with these black plastic lids. I know those, they can sometimes be good. Glass jars, wooden cabinets with glass shelving. All right, so there you can see what she was talking about. Next slide. And then they've got mammal and bird skins as well, and they seal them in industrial plastic and put them in wooden drawers. So she says it would be beneficial to add lining to the drawers. And then they've also got a dry insect collection. So the insect specimens, they've got pins, they've used steel pins for those. And they're stored in wooden drawers that have a glass lid. So those glass lids, I think most entomology collections have. And then they also have a herbarium, and they've got herbarium sheets in specimen and genus folders. So that's good. And the folders are kept in pigeonholes and steel cabinets that seal well. Next slide, if you can see what she was talking about. So there's their wooden cabinets and wooden drawers with their specimens sealed in plastic bags. And it would be good to maybe, if there's any people here who work with skins, to find out about if there are any risks associated with sealing your specimens, your skins like that in plastic bags. And then there are the insects on the right-hand side, pinned insects in wooden drawers. Right, next slide. This is their herbarium. So you can see neat and tidy metal cabinets and everything in their pigeonholes. So that looks really good, their herbarium. All right, so I think that's it from the Scocusa collection. And now we'll hand over to Daniela from Afribug. So she'll talk about both a wet collection and their pinned insect collection. So over to you, Daniela.
Okay, so we're one of the smaller collections. We're an environmental consultancy company that uses ants as indicator species. So our collection started off as a small reference collection and then grew rapidly. So I'm just going to show you for now our wet collection. So we've got metal cabinets. These are the 2 metal cabinets. Next picture, please. So in our room, it's also our office. We haven't got a storeroom individually for our collection yet. We are moving towards that goal where we can get a closed off storeroom that has no light. But in the meantime, we have to kind of do the best that we can with the storage that we have. So this is purely our wet collection. Everything is in plastic lock and locks. We have basically everything saturated with ethanol. They're all kept in almost all of them are kept in BioLite 48 well multi-dishes within the lock and locks. We do have some polytops. As Ian mentioned last week, polytops can be a bit of a nightmare. So if we do use polytops, we tend to put them in one of these lock and locks and put ethanol in the lock and lock as well. And because it's so saturated, our specimens don't dry out. And there is some absorption in the plastic with regards to the ethanol. So we have yearly checks and we found that it's a year standard basically before anything drops to dangerous levels. Everything's labeled when that was collected. We have a hard copy log of when we last checked, when ethanol needed to be topped up. There are labels on each of the boxes saying what specimens can be found in the boxes. We also have a spreadsheet saying where and which shelves specimens can be found at. So if you go to the next picture, that's the full shelving organization that we have for now. We do need to move into bigger space. We do know that things are slightly overflowing, but this is what we have done for now. And most of our specimens, nothing's dried out and it's working really well. So that's just briefly what I wanted to say about our wet collection. But yeah, we're looking forward to moving into a bigger space and updating it to more museum standards. So yes, thank you.
Okay, thanks very much, Daniela. So I think we'll just move straight on to your pinned collection now. So this also covers organization, not just storage. So back to you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, as I said, we're one of the smaller collections. So we started out as an environmental consultancy company using ants. So our initial small reference collection has now grown to roughly 20,000 pin specimens, consisting of 87 genera and 1,681 species, subspecies, and morphospecies. Next slide, please. Luckily, ants are small, stating the obvious there. So our entire pin collection fits within those 2 cabinets, which do have magnetic sealed and have silica gel to control the humidity. We soon will need to expand into a 3rd cabinet. Initially, how we organized the collection were project codes, so what projects we were working on and what references. But soon that became no longer feasible because our collection grew quite quickly. So we moved more into taxonomic hierarchy, which is subfamily, genus, and species. And we've moved over the vast majority of our projects into the collection and organized it hierarchically, but we've got 3 more trays which need to be done. Next slide, please. The drawers are organized in terms of subfamily, and after that it's alphabetically within that the genus and alphabetically species, with the exception of morphospecies codes, which are organized also alphabetically but numerically after that. So what I mean by a morphospecies code is a code that we assign to a specimen, usually for one of 3 reasons. Either they're clearly a new species, or 2, the genus simply doesn't have up-to-date taxonomy, so there's no keys, so we can't confidently assign a name to the individual specimen. Or number 3, if we're in a time-constrained project, we sometimes might assign a code, but we do come back and revise and update the names when we do have time. So morphospecies code usually is AFRC, which is our collection, and then a location, so ZA is South Africa, TZ is Tanzania, and then 1 to however many new ones we have. Next slide, please. Okay, in each of our boxes, we have clearly named the species and who described it at the top of the box and when it was described. And then each ant has a unique identifier called a CASIN. The system was developed by the California Academy of Sciences. So it's a global unique identifier, which assists with AntWeb, which I'll talk about in a few seconds. The other labels also say where it was collected, when it was collected, who by. The third label is its habitat and the method of collection. About 98% of our collection is already databased. We do use Biota. All the information is listed in Biota, as well as if the specimen is out on loan, or if it's returned from loan, it maintains a historical record. We also keep a hard copy logbook of anything that does go out on loan. We are very regular on loaning out material. We currently have loans out at a ZICO, California Academy of Sciences in Japan, and the Smithsonian. Next slide, please. Oh, sorry, the slide distorted a bit. Sorry, it's cut off the head here, but it was a screenshot of what you can see on AntWeb. So this specimen is a new species of Stromogenus, which was collected by Peter Hawkes in 2006 in Ridgely Nature Reserve. So AntWeb helps us keep our collection up to date. So if a new revision is published, when we upload specimens to AntWeb, so we upload our whole collection when we do upload, it informs us of any names that have been outdated and what the current updated name is. So if you look at the labels in the bottom right-hand corner, this is Pyramica spa. So initially these were called Pyramica, but then a revision lumped them into Stromogenus. So now its current valid name is Stromogenus, but because it's not a described species, we have a morphospecies code of AFRC Z02. Please note, if anyone wants to create anything similar to AntWeb, they are happy to share the source code information. They're very happy to share any and all information. Some of the challenges we face as a smaller institution is obviously space and keeping up-to-date databasing. But I feel like that is a challenge we all face, but we're, as I said, continuing to grow and trying to keep update to museum standards. So thank you very much. And that's me.
Okay, thanks very much, Daniela. That's very impressive, actually, for a small private collection. I think we'll come back at the end and maybe take questions and also just talk about the storage arrangement there, or the storage equipment. So the plastic drawers and that, it looks really good. Okay, so now we're looking at the last collection, and unfortunately, Henri doesn't have a microphone on her computer, but she has put together this presentation, and I'm hoping she's here. If there's any questions, then she can answer in the chat box, because I won't be able to. So I'll just speak to hers. So this is the Compton Herbarium. It's in Kirstenbosch, and it's mainly dried plant specimens, so herbarium mounts. They do also have DNA material, leaf material, seeds, wood samples, maps, historical books, and botanical art. So quite a wide range. Next slide. So this just shows the general layout, and it's a very sort of well-organized, clean, neat environment. I've been there several times. They've been replacing most of their wood cabinets with metal ones. So at the bottom there you can see the metal cabinets. Very well constructed. Next slide. And then there's the old wooden ones, and they've still got a few of them with specimens and wood samples from the South African Museum collection. So I don't know when, and maybe one of the people here can help us with this, but at some point the South African Museum moved their herbarium to the Compton, and so it's still kept separately. but it's now housed in the Compton Herbarium. And so that's still in the old wooden cabinets. And then at the bottom, she's got wood sample collection. So these are samples of wood. Right, next slide. Then they've got leaf material, which is stored in freezers. So you can see the freezer there and trays with these samples. I'm not sure how they organize them, if they follow some kind of a system with that. Maybe Henri can put in the chat box how this leaf material collection is organized. Next slide. And then they've also got their plant DNA collection, and this is in a -80 freezer that you can see there. And then there's the drawers, and they've got their racks and their samples. You can see that they've got some kind of a numbering system for those. And I know that this is a challenge when you've got thousands of these tiny little tubes. How do you find things and how do you manage these collections? So it is a challenge, right? Next slide. And then this is their seed collection. So this looks like a metal cabinet with drawers. And then I don't know how the seeds are packed in there, if they're in packets or boxes. I assume it's packets. And then on the right there, they've got a metal cabinet for maps. And you can see the maps, hanging maps there. So I think that used to be quite common before we got Google Earth and various other digital tools for being able to see maps. Okay, next slide. Here we go. So they have chest freezers for decontaminating all incoming parcels, loans, gifts, donations, collected materials before opening. So that's good. And then the unprocessed materials that goes into a dryer with pressed plant material. So you can see all the plant presses there in the plant dryer. Yeah, so they log all material in the chest freezers and the dryer in a register to track and record and prevent loss of specimens. So that's good. They fire suppression, so they're very good. They do have smoke detectors there. They have a link to the alarm. All right, and it's a gas fire suppression system. So I think on the next slide, it might show the gas bottles. Yeah, there we go. So those, you can see just how many of these gas bottles you need connected to the system. And those have to be regularly checked. And so that gas cylinder system is connected to the entire herbarium. You can see all the pipes there. And then those cylinders will need to be checked and inspected professionally on a regular basis. And that's what I was saying last week. If these things discharge accidentally, it's very expensive to have them refilled. All right, so that's great. They've got a really good system there. Okay, well, thank you very much, Henri, for that presentation, if she's here. Okay, I see that Fulu said that there was a video that Saib wanted to show. And can we show that now before we go on into questions? Because I'm assuming it's showing collection storage.
Yes. Yes, permission. It was not designed for this, but it's a video that that Audrey asked us to prepare, I think early this year. Yeah, but we can play it.
Okay. All right. Let's have a look at it now. Thank you.
Welcome to the SIBE collection storage area. The area is monitored using the building management system that reports room gas levels as detected by gas sensors placed on different parts of the building. The inside of the collection room has no electrical plugs or sockets in it. All plugs are outside of the room. The wet collection is kept in glass bottles and in fiberglass tanks. The glass bottles are placed on shelves and arranged according to their family name starting from A to Z. Within the families are the genus and species that are also arranged alphabetically. At species level, the bottles are arranged from the smallest to the biggest, and at bottle size level, the bottles are arranged from the smallest number to the largest. The fiberglass tanks are not arranged in a specific order. They are filled up, and when full, an inventory is done and pasted on the tank to show what is inside. Our dry specimens are shelved in cabinets that are numbered in an ascending order, and an inventory of each cabinet is done and pasted outside. We keep our hazardous chemicals in a separate chemical room. The chemical store is locked with a padlock. The ethanol tanks are kept separate from the side where the ethanol mixer tank is kept.
Okay, thank you very much for that video. That was really, really very interesting to see, and thank you for putting that together. All right, so we've had inputs, very different types of collections. Are there any questions from anybody? You can come into the chat box, or you can put your hand up and ask the question. I think I'll kick off so long, and you can think if you've got questions. So I wanted to ask if we've got any people here who deal with, Lee is here, so that's good. So I wanted to ask about keeping the mammal or bird skins sealed in plastic. Is there any problem with that? Phil might also know.
Hi, Michelle, can you hear me? I know that I've been having some audio troubles.
Yeah, we can hear you.
So with us based in Durban, that is anything where you add an additional layer of, containment. In certain cases, is not ideal because of our issues with humidity, but that's specifically because we're at the coast. I think it might be something different if you're a bit further inland and humidity levels aren't that much of an issue. So we do find that in enclosed boxes, there is sometimes issues with I don't know where the moisture comes from, but you actually find moisture inside these Addis type sealed boxes. Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Lee. Yeah, so that would be my concern. Phil?
Yeah, I've not really got experience with this. We've got one specimen that was vacuum packed in a plastic bag. The problems I can foresee are exactly as Lee said. We also have problem with humidity, and we have had mold on. I've got quite a few specimens now being cleaned, so we probably wouldn't think that was a good way to go. Yeah, another problem possibly is again in space. It actually physically takes up more space, I think, having them sealed in plastic, and we just don't really have the space to play with. So it's actually much easier storing the specimens side by side in a drawer.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so I think that would have been my concern. If there's any moisture in that specimen, it's going to, if you seal it in a bag, it's going to enable the growth of molds, bacteria that might rot that specimen. Any ideas about how the East London Museum could divide up big drawers into smaller compartments? So I was interested in the plastic drawers that they have at Afribugs, because I know KZN Museum used to have some plastic drawers, and then I think that there was a problem. I don't know if they were too expensive or if they couldn't get a supplier, but I was wondering if you can't get something similar made to fit into those big drawers to sort of divide them up like they do with the insects, just on a bigger scale.
Yeah, thanks, Michelle. That sounds like quite a good suggestion. It did actually occur to me that might possibly be a possibility. There is a company in East London that actually makes various plastic trays and boxes and things, so that might be an option to look into. So thanks very much for that.
Yeah, you just have to look and check that it's the right kind of plastic. So remember last week we said plastics do give off chemicals, so you have to make sure that it's the right kind. All right, so that is a suggestion of how you can do it. Daniela, from your side, those plastic drawers, are they custom made or are they bought from where do you get them from?
So ours were custom made, but not for us, for the Transvaal Museum, and they were overflow. So my boss Peter Hawkes managed to get enough and built the cabinets. He actually physically built them for those drawers. So we're not sure where to get them now either, unfortunately.
It was a one-off, some regions.
Okay. Yeah, I think that was an issue. I remember now, I've seen those in the compactors at the Transvaal at the Song Museum and the Lepidoptera collection. I think, yeah. So for Sire, I don't know if one of you can answer. So that you've got a lot of material there, and you record what's in the cabinet on the outside or what's in the tank on the outside of the tank. But do you know, Nkosinati, if you record the location of each specimen in your database? So if somebody says go and find whatever specimen for a loan or for someone to look at, how do you find where it is without having to go and read all those inventories on the outside of the tanks or cabinets?
Now, everything, Michelle, is database. The locations are specified on the preparation field. So it will tell you exactly, for in case of skeletons, it will tell you which drawer, it will tell you which shelf and then which drawer you will find. Same as all those things have got numbers. Those numbers are recorded on specify on preparation, so you will know exactly. But you won't know if it's a very big thing. You will have to. It's a mission to get specimens out of it if there are many, maybe more than 10 or 20, especially the big ones. But all that information is in specify. Very easy to find. Mm.
Okay, all right. I just wondered. Okay, thank you for that. Yeah, I can imagine. Otherwise, it's difficult to find them.
I think one more thing that we did not share there is for our biobank. It's the same thing as well there. So the locations, all the locations are there, especially for the ones that are cataloged. So everything you will find in those locations. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thanks for that. All right. So I think that was those were the questions I had. Does anybody else have questions for any of the people who presented, or just general questions about collection storage, collection organization? Looking in the chat box here, Polytops, the Polytops are a nightmare. So Pietro said that, and I think that we've all found that they are a challenge. Pietro, have you got any other suggestions, or do you only use Polytops for your collection?
Hello, everybody. Yeah, we only use Polytops for the collection because our collection organization was started in such a way that it prefers the Polytops. So it's going to be like moving the whole collection to put it in other containers. But it is a problem, especially now with your SCMs as well, because you can't choose where you buy your Polytops. So you get quotes and they just source them. And I found that nowadays labs source from, or companies that we buy from, it seems to me they source from somewhere else and then they sell to you. So yeah, you don't really have what the problem with the Polytops is, the lids don't close nicely and then you get a lot of evaporation.
Okay, thanks, Pietro. Yeah, so I think that is the big, I mean, the quality does seem to be variable. So you get some that are fine and then others that are not fine. And I think that the big problem, so even if the lid fits, it seems to lift over time. So you top it up with ethanol, and I don't know if there's some kind of an expansion, but it sort of pushes the lid up. And then it dries out.
Yeah, it does. And what I also found is if you fill up the Polytop past a certain height with your preservative, it bleeds out of the little lid. It just you can't stop it. It just bleeds out of there. So you get the preservative just coming out. So yeah, it's just the lids are a problem and they get brittle. So sometimes when you go through it again, if you pop off the Polytop, the top part will come off and the bottom part would still be in the Polytop, so of the lid, so it breaks in two.
Yeah, okay. So, I mean, one solution, so Polytops, I don't think the glass is that bad, but to put the Polytops with the plug instead of a lid and then put them into big bottles and fill that with ethanol. But that's a big job if you've got as many specimens as you have at the ARC. I think that could be a challenge.
Yeah, that is going to be a challenge, and the initial, I mean, money to put down to get, because then all our cabinets will have to be replaced as well because they're not suitable for that. I know only of one other collection. There may be others, but I know of only one other collection that it's in America somewhere that stores their arachnids this way. All the others do the smaller Polytop with the cotton wool stopper into a bigger, like a canned fruit bottle or whatever.
Okay. Thanks, Pietru. All right, Cindy, I see you've got a question.
Hi, it's me actually. I'm not Zinzi today. Just to comment on the plastic console lids that we've got through the NSCF. They are really, really hard plastic and actually quite difficult to get onto some of the jars. So I don't know whether we're going to have to go back to the supplier and try to persuade them to make it out of a slightly different material, but I don't know whether anybody else has had that experience. Most of them fit, but some of them you just can't get them onto the bottles.
Okay. So do you think it's the manufacture of the lids? Some of them are just not particularly well made.
It's very, very hard plastic. I think they've used a plastic which is registered as being alcohol resistant, and part of that is that then it's not very pliable, and it's the properties of the plastic. I don't know whether they can adjust that, but I think we're gonna contact them and try to ask them if they can alter the plastic composition maybe. But I was just wondering if anybody else had that issue.
Okay, I don't know if anybody else has worked with those lids that we had made through the NSCF. So I know we had a whole lot made, and then between Chanel and Sipho, they distributed them. Has anybody else worked with those lids?
Michelle, it's Kirsten, if I can come in.
Yes.
So I've last week now used the lids that we've gotten through the NSCF on our console jars. And I know what Roger is talking about. With some of the lids, you struggle to get them on. Some you have a feeling, no, this was a good fit. And with others, you wondered, is this lid now on tight? And I thought I must give it a bit of time. With some, I had the impression if you tilt the console jar once the lid is on, that you still get some alcohol leakage. With others, not. So, yeah, it wasn't 100% satisfactory fit all the time. I know what Roger means. I agree.
So it's the consistency then of the manufacturing. If some work and others don't.
If I can get in there, I think this just they work, but you need not to be in a hurry when you are putting it on. You need to be because if you close it properly, then it's gonna be fine. But if it's not, if you don't put it properly, then you'll have a problem trying to open it. Yeah, they are tight. I don't know, Roger, you mentioned that maybe we need to go back to them, but we have lots now. I don't know what they are going to do because we've got lots of those, and they fit very nicely on the new, because now there is a new 0.5. There is a new 0.5. They have done away with the old one. So for 1 liter, 2 liters, they fit very well. The problem is with the old 0.5, 500 milliliter jar. Otherwise, for the others, it's working perfect. My colleagues who work with this in Zinospoman, I think they can attest to this.
Okay, all right, thanks, Nkosino. I think it's useful for us to try and understand what the problem is. We won't go into too much detail now, but I mean, we thought that we'd solved the problem about the lids, and so it's interesting to hear. Okay, let me just get some input from Matabara. Have you used these new lids?
Hi, everyone. Yes, I'm currently using them, and I don't know if you can see. So these ones worked, but over time, they lose elasticity and they become a little bit loose. These ones, they don't work. So what we've been doing, we've been replacing these with these, because we had an enormous supply of these ones. And then we had these ones. These ones are perfect. and highly recommended. These ones,
Yeah.
I don't have any problem. And as Kosinati said, if you are a little bit gentle when you are closing your lid, you wouldn't have any problem with this one.
No.
Yeah, that's the one that we bought.
Do you have the 500 milliliter? That's a 1 liter jar, right?
And then there's also these ones. These ones, I haven't have any problem with them, but my fear is that if they go back, because it's kind of a similar plastic. So I don't know. So that's my fear, but the highly recommended one are these ones. These are perfect. Yeah, thank you. This is just my observation of this lead.
Okay, all right. Thanks, Matabara. Yeah, so a whole assortment of lids there. So Nkosinati was asked to have 0.5 liter bottles, so 500 ml console bottles in your collection, Matabara.
Okay, with 500 mils, we don't have really, only have this lead, but this goes between 175 to 250. And even with these ones too, we also have 2 groups. There's one which are a little bit softer and the one which are hard. Those which are hard, they are very bad. When the alcohol pressure fits in them, it pushes them easily. But these soft ones, for some reasons, they hold it tight. Yeah, so I don't know, depending on who's supplying or where you're buying them from, don't go for the hard ones. The hard ones, how you know if they're hard? If you drop them and they make extremely loud noise, then you know they are very, very hard plastic. So don't go for those ones. So look for the one which are a little bit soft. So this one's a little bit soft, and it must have this rubber inside. If it has that, this will be the perfect lid to go for. And this comes in black and white as well.
Right. Okay, thanks for that. So, yeah, I think the challenge is, you never know when you order these kinds of bottles what you're going to get, the quality. I think Pietro raised this with, you put in your order to supply chain management, or you put your order in and you don't know what the quality is going to be coming out, and it's inconsistent. So one consignment you get has one kind of lid, the next one has another kind, and that's why we're really looking for something that we can say this always works. This is for this particular material, manufactured in this way. I think that's our challenge. Pietro?
Yes, I saw now in the chat group somebody was talking about wrapping with parafilm. Just a quick mention about that. I know previously we got it's not parafilm, but it's like a little white sealant, but you had to import it from, I think, the UK. But even those, they get brittle, and after a while they just disintegrate, kind of. They just pop off the lids. I just want to question, I know no chemist or plastic, whatever, because I just think that the alcohol is so corrosive on plastic, because even us because we make big containers full of our preservative just for easy dispensing. And I mean, you only get nice big plastic containers, and every now and again we will have to get a new one because it starts leaking wherever there's where the little tap is or whatever, where there's a seal, it starts leaking because the alcohol is just so corrosive.
Yeah, thanks. So that's what we were saying last week. So ethanol eats plastic unless it's this polypropylene. So this, the kinds of lids that we've had are not supposed to be you know, they're not supposed to deteriorate with ethanol, but all normal plastics will, they will crack and become brittle and start to leak. Okay, so I think we must just keep tracking that story with the lids. Obviously, for the people with dry collections, it doesn't affect you, but for the wet collections, it's a big deal for our storage. Okay, so yeah, you can see in the chat box, samples went to Bitsong and Durban. The feedback was that the lids worked. It seems like the manufacturing consistency then differs. Yeah, and then also the older new 500 ml jars. All right, well, we'll be interested to hear going forward what happens with those. So thank you for that. Any other comments or questions about storage, standards, storage organization? Okay, so here he said, yeah, it's actually the jars that seem to vary. The lids are good. Last chance for questions to the presenters. All right, okay, I think let's go back to the presentation. I'm just going to talk through the course assignment, but it's also relevant for anybody who's involved in implementing the manual. So if you're doing the course, this is assignment number 9. And there's 2 choices. So the first option is to do an assessment of the current storage for a particular collection. So this is obviously the first step in meeting standards, is to know where you are. So what is the current status? And we go back to the 10 agents of deterioration and the 5 layers of enclosure, so that you go through everything systematically. It's not just random sort of thinking. And I've drawn up a template for this, and you have to complete the template. So I think whether you're doing the assignment for the course or whether you're just trying to implement the manual and meet the standards, you look at this template. It's like, what have you got at the moment? So what is the current situation? And then also to say what is missing or what's wrong according to the standards. And you could color code it according to whether it's the correct standard, what you've got, or whether there's a problem. Next slide. So this is just to remind you, these are the 10 agents of deterioration and loss. So you have to think about your collection storage and what it's trying to prevent. So is it trying to prevent breakage from physical forces, or rotting from mold, or incorrect temperatures, light getting to the specimens or the labels? Pollutants come from the chemicals of the plastic, or wood, even gives off gases. It can be dirt and dust, could be seen as pollutants. Pests, water, are you trying to prevent water damage, so to make sure that your specimens are kept dry, mold-free? Fire is obvious. Is it something to prevent theft or vandalism? So you've got to think about what you're trying to prevent with your storage here. Right, next one. And then also to think about these layers of enclosure. So you've got to think about your storage, your building. So what do you need to do at a building level? What do you need to do at a storeroom level, at your cabinets or shelving level, at your drawers or bottles or boxes level? And then if you've got some kind of packaging or wrapping or cushioning for the specimen. So some of these things, obviously fire, you can't protect most specimens with the way you wrap them or package them. It would have to be at the level of storage, the level of the room, and the level of the building. Your containers, your glass bottles are to protect them from drying out, and that you do at a container level. So it's important to think of these different levels. Next slide. So this is the template for the table. It is an Excel spreadsheet, and what I've also put in there are the standards. So what is the standard? and then what are the things that you're trying to prevent. So you can see I've put it in here, but it's in a separate field in the spreadsheet. So for physical forces, you're trying to prevent the breakage of specimens. So you've got to think about the building. It's maybe not that big a deal, but your storeroom, if ceilings collapse, if walls fall, you're going to have breakage. Your containers, if you have drawers that you have to yank, you're going to have vibrations and physical damage to the specimens. And then your humidity, you trying to prevent mold, rot, pests, high humidity. That's the environment where you have all of those things. But if it's too dry, you get cracking and brittle specimens. And if it's not stable and you have rapid fluctuations in humidity, you get swelling, contracting, drying, and eventually the specimen will be destroyed. You've got to think about for your humidity, what's your storeroom? You need a dehumidifier or humidity control as part of your climate control. Your cabinets and shelves are not going to help you very much. Your containers, well, you've got to think about if you've sealed something in plastic, if you've got wooden drawers, maybe it promotes, retains moisture, and so you have high humidity. So you can see how you've got to think through each of these. So this is the template. Next slide. And here I've just given an example. So for physical forces, your building, it must be a sound construction. So this is pretend collection, done an assessment. Our building is well constructed. We have no building issues, no structural faults. The storeroom is the same. The ceiling is good. The walls are good. The floors are good. The shelving is bolted to the floor. It's not going to fall off or be bumped and shake and make things fall off of it. There's the restraining bar on all the shelves. The smaller specimens, so this we pretend this is a dry collection of bones or something. Smaller specimens would be in archival quality boxes to prevent them being bumped or dropped. And large specimens would be on the shelves, but they're sitting on foam or cushioning. So all of these are green. This meets the standards. And then if we look at humidity, so here you've got dehumidifiers as part of the climate control, and the relative humidity is maintained at 45%. That's green. So you can see how I've color coded there. And if it's not relevant, then you just put not applicable or not relevant. So you'd go through this whole table and complete all the sections that are relevant to your collection. But it's only not relevant, not applicable, or not relevant if it really isn't. So, the building, you're not going to worry about trying to control the humidity in the whole building. That's not important. It's about only in the storeroom that you really need to control humidity. It's the same as the temperature. That's why I've put not applicable for the building humidity and not applicable for the temperature for the building. It's not that important. You're worried about the storeroom. And you can't really manage temperature with the cabinets or shelves or containers or packaging or lining. You have to really control the storeroom. And then for fire, it's different because the whole building needs to have fire detection and suppression system, or at least detection and alarm. Your fire suppression might only be in the storeroom, and that's fine. But you need a fire alarm for the building. So I hope this explains. I need to complete it for all 10 agents of deterioration and loss, and all 5 layers. So we will make that spreadsheet available, and that will be the one option for the assignment. Next one, next slide, please. Okay, so this is the second option. So if you're not really that interested, or you've already done your, there's no issues with your collection storage, you might choose option 2. And again, everybody should have this. If you're not doing the course, you should have a a documented way that your collection is organized. So, for example, I think Nkosanachi said for SIAB, or whoever was narrating that great video, I've got a suspicion it might have been Sipamandla, but there you've got, it's organized by family and then within family by genus. But what taxonomic system do you use? So which authority do you use? Do you use Fishes of the World, or do you use the Catalogue of Life? Or do you, which authority do you use? So all of that should be documented, because if you leave, somebody else needs to know, okay, so where do I check what updates have been made? And also, just which families, which genera, which arrangement. So you need to say which system. So for everybody doing the course or not, it's important to actually document the system that you use. And then how is that implemented in your collection? So, what they said in that video, as well as that for those big tanks, it's not possible to follow a taxonomic system. It's really what you can fit in where. That needs to be documented. So you need to explain for these, this is the process we follow. We don't follow a taxonomic system. And then for your building, is the whole collection in one building? I know some collections are split across different buildings. And how is that split organized? And then rooms, do you have different rooms? If there's more than one room, how is the collection organized across those rooms? And then your shelves and cabinets, how are they arranged and numbered? And you can include layout drawings, taxon tables, links to the taxonomic authority that you use. So anything that would explain to others how the collection is organized. I think that's a really important document to have, and it's a second option for the assignment. There's no template for this. If there's a demand, I can put together a template or some more detailed guidelines. I will actually put some more detailed guidelines and we can circulate that. Okay, I think that's it. Next slide. I think that's it. Yeah. So final, if you've got any questions or comments or concerns about the assignments or those documents that are needed, you're welcome to ask.